From the moment Clara Bennett stepped into the bustling atmosphere of the coastal haven in Asheville, North Carolina, she had no idea her life would be forever changed before her night shift ended. The scent of craft beer mingling with savory seafood wasn't what made her heart race. It was the rumor of a notorious millionaire, rich beyond measure, yet infamous for his volatile temper, who had just arrived. Chaos was about to erupt like never before. Amid the clinking of glasses and the tense figure of the manager sweeping past the bar, a quiet waitress made one bold decision that sent shockwaves through the entire tavern, and far beyond. Could an ordinary young woman stand up to power and win? What did Clara do that made the whole city of Asheville take notice? Let's dive into this dramatic tale where courage defies every limit. What would you do if a powerful figure threatened your very existence? All right, my dear audience. Get ready for a story that will leave you in awe. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly resonate with what I'm sharing here, and leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always thrilling to see viewers joining us from all around the world. Clara Bennett had never backed down from an uncertain life. At 27, she stood just 5'3", petite but quick-footed, with brown hair always neatly tied into a bun at the nape of her neck, kept out of the way during peak hours. With a gentle smile and eyes filled with quiet determination, Clara brought a particular sense of calm to every guest she passed at the Coastal Haven, a refined wine bar nestled in the heart of Asheville, North Carolina. The Coastal Haven stood out with its meticulously polished oak-paneled walls and warm, golden lighting that seemed to wrap the room in a soft embrace. White linens dressed every table. The menu offered elegant seafood dishes, pan-seared salmon, butter-garlic grilled lobster, both delicate and indulgent. On Saturday nights, the place was always full. Couples exchanged tender glances, groups of friends clinked glasses and laughed aloud. Local business people chatted over glasses of glistening wine. The buoyant atmosphere came in part from the monthly craft beer tasting event, but more so from one name whispered across nearly every table: Theodore Langley. Langley was a living legend in the region. A real estate tycoon who'd grown up in Asheville, left it behind to build an empire in New York, and returned with a fortune and a trail of stories as unpredictable as his temper. Some said he was shockingly generous. Others whispered about his explosive rages. His return stirred not just the local press, but something more subtle, an undercurrent of tension that ran through every footstep, every plated dish leaving the kitchen of the Coastal Haven. In the gleaming kitchen, the scent of butter and garlic mingled with the steam rising from hot iron pans. The chefs moved like a choreographed ensemble, one flipping salmon, another drizzling sauce over lobster tails. The head chef shouted orders non-stop. "Table 6 wants medium. Table 8 needs crispy skin." Yet an unspoken command hung heavier than all the rest. Don't upset Langley. Clara heard the whispers between staff. Langley likes red wine. But if it's the wrong one, he'll explode. That wasn't a joke. Those who had served him before spoke of an eerie silence that always came right before the storm. But Clara didn't flinch. She was used to keeping her cool with all types of guests: the drunk, the rude, the wealthy who thought a server's smile was mandatory. She quietly stepped into the wine cellar, rows of bottles arranged by year, vineyard, and flavor. Her fingers skimmed familiar labels, then paused on a rare Pinot Noir. Deep, soft, understated. The kind of wine she believed would please a difficult guest, while still being subtle enough not to flaunt. Clara didn't choose out of fear. She chose by instinct, the instinct of someone who had lived far too long with bottled-up emotions and choices that always put others first. Theodore Langley had yet to arrive, but the space already seemed to be rearranging itself in anticipation of his presence. Candles were relit, cutlery reset, though it had been perfectly placed. Clara stood tall, her white shirt pressed, her black apron neatly tied. Her eyes betrayed no worry. She was used to staying calm, not because life had ever been kind to her, but because she had never been given the option to fall apart. Outside, the front door let out a soft ting. The room paused. Conversations lowered. A few heads turned toward the entrance. Clara didn't look. She took a breath, adjusted the tray of wine in her hands, and walked toward the table specially marked on the night's service list. Tonight might be about Langley, but for Clara, it was just another shift, one more night of effort, one more night of holding it all together, one more night to earn enough to cover her father's medical bills. A night that, perhaps destiny was quietly using to redraw the path of a woman who never dared to dream it could change. When the oak door opened once more, a cool breeze followed the man who stepped inside. No introduction was needed. Everyone in the room knew. It was Theodore Langley. Tall, broad-shouldered, he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit, sharp lapels, a crisp white shirt with a silver collar pin, a quiet signal of status. His salt and pepper hair was neatly slicked back. His blue-gray eyes swept across the dining room, piercing, arrogant, and hiding, just behind the brow, something worn, something tired. For a moment, the entire restaurant held its breath. No one spoke, but everyone felt it, the sudden pressure that dropped into the space, as if a character out of a novel had stepped into the room, trailing power and trouble in equal measure. Forks paused mid-air, a few eyes darted sideways, then things returned to normal, or at least they pretended to. Clara Bennett, wiping the rim of a wine glass, heard her name called from across the room. Table 8. Langley. James Harper, the veteran manager, had given her the task. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Because if anyone could maintain calm in a fragile situation, it was Clara. She wasn't loud, but the composure in her movement and the quiet care in her manner always made guests feel seen, even when they said nothing at all. Langley sank into the leather seat, crossed one leg confidently, and didn't bother looking at the menu. La Tâche 2005, he said, his voice low, drawn out, as if every word were an order. Clara nodded slightly. She didn't write it down. She turned away, face neutral, but inside, she knew. Langley had been drinking before he arrived. The way his eyes shifted, the unnatural flush in his cheeks, the heavy breath, all signs she had seen before. Alcohol often came with power, but sometimes it exposed the corners of a man that money couldn't conceal. When she returned with the bottle, Langley was already leaning back in his chair. He smiled, but it wasn't real. Clara poured the wine with steady hands, letting the ruby liquid stream smoothly into the glass. Langley took a sip. Not bad, he muttered, then drank again, and again, and again. In less than 10 minutes, Clara's concern proved true. He had crossed the line. His sentences slurred, his gestures grew exaggerated, like the abrupt wave of his hand that startled the couple at the next table. When Langley asked for a fourth pour, Clara approached. She leaned slightly forward, her smile still present, but her eyes now serious. "Mr. Langley, I'm afraid you may have exceeded the recommended limit. May I offer you a strong coffee, or perhaps sparkling water to refresh?" Her tone was gentle, not submissive, but firm enough to carry a message. Silence. Then, bang! His palm slammed the table. The glass trembled, wine rippled to the rim of the plate. "Do you know who I am?" he growled, the mix of liquor and fury sour in the air. "I could buy this whole damn restaurant right now if I wanted to." Conversation stopped dead. A young couple turned, wide-eyed. Staff peered out from the kitchen, faces tense. The air thickened, as if Langley's voice alone was enough to fill the entire room. Clara didn't move. She didn't flush. Her heart was racing, but her face didn't change. She inhaled slowly, steadying her voice. "We are honored to serve you, Mr. Langley, but under house policy, we are responsible for the safety of all our guests, including you." Langley narrowed his eyes, then let out a dry laugh. But it wasn't amused. It was the kind of laugh that comes right before someone breaks something. "You just threw your career in the trash," he said flatly, voice cold as steel. "You think you'll still be working here next week? I'll make sure no restaurant in this state ever hires you again." Before Clara could respond, James Harper stepped in. Tall and calm, he stood between them. "I'll take care of Mr. Langley personally," James said, and with a subtle motion, invited him toward a private table in the VIP corner, reserved for those who desired discretion. Langley stood, swayed just slightly. As he followed James, his gaze lingered on Clara. A cold stare, more warning than rage. Clara remained where she was, her hand lightly clutching the folded towel inside her sleeve. She said nothing. But inside she knew. Sometimes, standing by your principles costs more than any apology. And sometimes, silence is the most powerful way to stand up for yourself. The next morning, before sunlight had fully pierced the thin layer of mist draped over the rooftops of Old Town Asheville, Clara woke with a weight pressing against her chest, not from the exhaustion of a long shift, but from the flood of news spreading faster than any illness ever could. On her phone, Theodore Langley's post dominated the screen. A blurry photo, taken secretly at the wine bar, was attached to a furious caption. "The arrogant waitress at the Coastal Haven humiliated me in front of everyone. She wasn't there to serve. She was there to grab attention. People like her have no place in the service industry." Within hours, the post had been shared thousands of times. Local media outlets jumped in immediately, headlining with flashy phrases, "Millionaire publicly insulted," "Clara Bennett, hero or opportunist." Her name, her surname, now entangled with a scandal she never chose. Clara sat frozen in the kitchen, a cup of coffee gone cold in her hands, her eyes dull and distant. She didn't cry, not because she didn't feel pain, but because she didn't have the luxury of being fragile. A new message pinged from the clinic. The doctor had reviewed her father's heart test results and strongly recommended surgery, immediately. The estimated cost far exceeded the modest savings she had scraped together over the past 3 years. It felt like the world was tilting, and at the center of it all stood her. At the Coastal Haven, the atmosphere was different too. Staff whispered behind the bar, customers glanced at her with discreet curiosity. Not all looks were harsh, some offered faint smiles, quiet tokens of support, but the heaviest gaze came from within Clara herself. She wasn't afraid of being disliked. What terrified her was her father, the hospital bills, the looming fear of being fired for a decision she still believed deep down had been right. Eleanor Ramsey, the wine bar's owner, called an emergency meeting just after lunch. Beside her sat James Harper, the usually calm manager, whose eyes now carried a tension rarely seen. Clara took the seat at the far end of the table. Her hands rested on her lap, gently clasped. "We're facing a storm," Eleanor began, her voice low and deliberate. "Langley isn't one to forget. He's already called 2 newspapers this morning, asking them to dig deeper into our staff. James opened a few documents on the table, printouts of the posts circulating online. "Langley's team is also threatening to sue us for defamation," he said, "and they've submitted a formal request for Clara's dismissal." Clara lowered her head. Her heart pounded, but her expression remained composed. She was never one to speak much, but today, even a single sigh felt too heavy to release. A few seconds of silence passed. Then Eleanor continued, her eyes fixed directly on Clara. "We support you. You did the right thing. But you also need to understand, this man has real power, especially in the real estate and tech communities here in Asheville. A dirty media campaign could do lasting damage to the restaurant." James added, "This is no longer about wine or etiquette. It's about reputation, public perception, and whether we can survive if Langley keeps smearing us." Clara looked up. Her eyes remained clear, but deeper now, filled with unease. "I didn't do anything wrong, but I don't want the restaurant to suffer because of me. If I need to step away, I will—" "No," Eleanor interrupted, swift but not unkind. "We've never fired anyone for doing the right thing, and we're not about to start now." James nodded, though his tone was more somber. "Still, Clara, you need to prepare yourself. Some customers may protest. Investors might hesitate. And your life, it may be scrutinized in ways you never expected." Clara gave a small nod. Inside her, a storm churned. Gratitude, pressure, confusion. But above all, a suffocating sense of being trapped. Between right and wrong, between dignity and survival, between justice and a ruthless reality. She asked herself, should I have just let it go? Just poured another glass of wine? Would a little compromise have spared all of this? She looked down at her hands, small scars from kitchen burns, faint calluses from years of carrying trays. These weren't the hands of someone who built a life on flattery. She had never wanted fame. But now, she had to choose. Stay silent to stay safe. Or stay true to herself, even if it meant losing everything. Dear listener, now is a good time to stretch, take a sip of water, and get ready for what comes next. The story's just getting more intense. Let us know in the comments. Where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? It's always amazing to see people tuning in from all around the world. And hey, comment 1 if you think this story is powerful. That's how we know you want more. Just when Clara felt as if she were standing in the middle of a swirling storm with no place to hold on, a message from an unknown number suddenly appeared on her phone screen. The words were simple, emotionless, yet they struck something deep inside her. "My name is Rachel Coleman. I used to be Langley's assistant. I have information you need to know." Clara froze in the restaurant's dressing room. Her hands went cold. Her fingers slid slowly across the screen, as if one wrong tap might shatter the world around her. She didn't know who Rachel was, nor could she be sure this wasn't another trap set by Langley. But the exhaustion pressing against her chest made her nod and agree to meet, like someone backed to the edge of a cliff, finally taking one step into the fog. That afternoon, Clara made her way to Blue Ridge Brew, a small cafe tucked on the outskirts of Asheville, known for its soft jazz and the smell of warm waffles. The sky was overcast. Thin strands of sunlight slipped through the frosted glass windows. Clara stepped inside, her heart tightening as she spotted a woman sitting in the corner, wrapped in a heavy coat, eyes sunken from lack of sleep, but glowing with something firm and quietly broken. "Clara?" the woman asked. Clara nodded, pulling out the chair opposite her. Between them were 2 cups of black coffee and a thin brown envelope, just like any ordinary package, yet somehow heavier than anything Clara had ever held. Rachel didn't say much. She spoke in a hoarse, slow voice. She explained that she'd been Langley's personal assistant for 3 years, that she had once believed in his vision, until she uncovered secret wire transfers tied to overseas projects, where funds were funneled into unnamed accounts, laundered and sent back as legal investments. She spoke up, and then she was fired. Rachel gently pushed the envelope toward Clara, resting her hand on her coffee cup, as if trying to keep herself from shaking. Inside is a USB, financial records, internal emails, wire receipts. Everything's time-stamped. If you choose to confront him, you deserve to know what you're up against. Clara stared at the small object on the table, a simple silver USB. It sat there quietly, almost as if it didn't exist. Yet its silence roared in her ears. She didn't pick it up immediately. Her eyes wandered instead to the window, where white clouds floated slowly past the distant mountains. "Why are you helping me?" Clara asked. Rachel sighed, lips curling slightly into a sad smile. "Because I stayed silent for too long, and you're the first person who dared to stand up, even if all you did was refuse to pour another glass of wine." Clara reached out and took the USB. It was cold to the touch. She nodded in thanks, then stood, unsure whether her legs would carry her out the door. That night, inside her tiny apartment, just big enough for a single bed, a wooden desk, and a worn bookshelf, Clara sat in front of her laptop. The USB lay before her like a question she wasn't ready to answer. She didn't plug it in, not yet. Instead, she stared at a framed photo beside the desk, an old black-and-white picture of her father as a young man, guitar in hand, smiling gently as if he'd never known what a medical bill even meant. She could almost hear his voice from years ago, whispering in her heart, "Being kind is never wrong, even if it costs you something." But now, could kindness pay for her father's surgery? Could it protect her from the power of a millionaire who knew no limits? Was it enough to keep the only job that supported the both of them? Clara placed her hand on her forehead. Her mind was a storm. If she went public with this information, she would expose Langley, but in doing so, she would also cast herself into a cyclone of media, legal trouble, even danger. If she stayed silent, people would go on believing she was in the wrong, and Langley, once again, would win. The cold blue glow of the screen reflected in her tired eyes. She reached forward, hesitantly plugged the USB into the port. A soft click sounded, barely more than a breath. She didn't open any files. She just sat there, silent. Her heart caught between two voices, one of morality and one of reality. Outside, the rain began to fall. Each drop against the glass pressed the moment in deeper. This moment, when Clara, a girl who once only knew how to pour wine and smile, now had to decide whether the truth was worth the price of her whole life. For many nights, Clara tossed and turned on her small bed, eyes wide open in the stillness of her room. The ticking of the clock felt no different than the pounding of her heart inside her chest. She no longer dreamed of a tiny coffee shop, or of outdoor photo shoots, or of the hill where her father used to strum his guitar. Her only dream now was survival. At last, on a gray morning without sunlight, Clara rose. She decided she wouldn't hide any longer. She would confront him, not for revenge, but to reclaim what men like Langley thought they had the right to steal: dignity. She contacted Langley's assistant. The man on the other end of the line hesitated when he heard her name, but eventually a meeting was arranged, 4 p.m., at the lobby of the Grand Artisan Hotel, where Langley often negotiated with his business partners. Clara arrived on time. No makeup, no heels. She wore her black Coastal Haven server's uniform, buttoned collar, apron neatly pressed, like a quiet declaration. I'm not here to apologize. I'm not here to hide who I am. I'm here as someone you tried to crush, and yet I'm still standing. Langley was already there, lounging on a brown leather sofa in the corner, slowly swirling a glass of whiskey. His eyes slid over Clara like he was sizing up a product he didn't value. No smile, no invitation to sit, no acknowledgement of guilt. But Clara didn't need that. She stepped closer, hands steady, and placed a small silver object onto the polished wooden table, the USB drive. "You know what this is," she said, voice calm, every word sharp. "I have information about your financial dealings. If you keep attacking me or the wine bar, I will make them public." The air in the lobby suddenly grew heavier. The hum of a quiet afternoon seemed trapped inside the glass he held. Langley scoffed. A familiar sound, cold, mocking, the sound of a man used to manipulating those weaker than him. "Are you threatening me? A waitress?" Clara didn't answer, but her gaze didn't flinch. Steady, unyielding. Langley lifted the glass, sipped as if performing. But Clara didn't move. Her next words came slowly, with precision. June 14th of last year. A $2.4 million transfer to a shell company in Belize. The recipient? A fake investment fund under your cousin's name. I have the wire records, the IP address, the internal emails. The whiskey glass froze mid-air. For a moment, Langley's face shifted, like the mask of power he wore had cracked. His eyes wavered. He set the glass down, too firmly. It landed with a sharp clink. He looked at Clara longer than he had before, like he was seeing for the first time something truly dangerous. "You've seen it all?" he asked, slower now, voice deeper, stripped of its contempt. Clara shook her head. "No. But if necessary, I won't hesitate to share it with the right people." Silence followed, long, thick, and unsteady. Langley leaned back, fingers interlaced. The arrogance faded, replaced by a tension he couldn't fully mask. For men like him, what they feared most wasn't being exposed. It was losing control. Finally, he gave a slight nod. "Fine. I'll withdraw all accusations. Take down every post, and I'll leave your little wine bar alone." Clara didn't sit. She waited. One last thing. One final claw swipe from a wounded beast. "But don't think you've won for good," Langley said, eyes darkening. "Men like me always find a way to reclaim what's ours." Clara stared straight at him. She didn't reply. She simply nodded, picked up the USB, left nothing else, and walked away. As she stepped out of the hotel, her heart didn't feel as light as she had imagined. It pounded in her chest like she'd just sprinted, each beat a warning bell. The late afternoon wind drifted through Asheville's streets, carrying the scent of coffee and the faint dust of nearby construction. Everything looked the same, but she was not. She didn't know whether she had won, or just provoked a dangerous animal. But one thing she knew with certainty. For the first time in countless days, living in fear, she had chosen to confront it, and she hadn't backed down. And that, for her, was already a victory. The days after the confrontation, no one knew exactly what had been said in that hotel lobby, but everyone saw the results. Langley's attack post quietly vanished from every social media platform. His legal team, once threatening to sue Clara and the restaurant, fell silent, as if they had never existed. Those threats dissolved into thin air, making way for calmer days at the coastal haven. Life's rhythm slowly returned to normal. The gentle clink of wine glasses, soft piano notes drifting through the oak-paneled dining room, familiar patrons reserving their tables under warm golden lights. Yet for Clara, nothing was as it used to be. She was no longer the quiet waitress, not in her colleagues' eyes, nor in the gentle tap on her shoulder from Eleanor, the owner, who whispered, "You've made us proud." One morning, arriving early to check her locker, Clara discovered a sealed envelope placed carefully inside. No name, no sender, just a small note, written in blue ink. "You deserve help." Inside lay $3,000, just enough to cover her father's surgery. Clara sat there in stunned silence, fingertips trembling as they touched the bills that would save her family. She didn't ask who had left it. Somehow, she already knew. True kindness needs no name. The surgery was a success. Her father recovered slowly, growing healthier by the day. Every time he smiled, Clara felt as though every fear, every wound she'd carried had been worth it. She returned to work at the coastal haven, still serving, still wiping tables, still delivering dishes on time. But now her co-workers called her by a half-joking, half-respectful nickname, the Millionaire's Conqueror. Clara only smiled, no pride, just the quiet confidence of someone who chose the right path, even when it was dangerous. One cool evening, after her final shift, Clara locked the doors. Above her, Asheville's sky glittered with stars. She stood there a moment, took a deep breath, and felt, for the first time in months, true peace. And in her heart, she knew. Doing what's right, no matter how frightening, is always worth it. Clara Bennett's story proves that even a small, honest act can change a world. If you feel inspired, please like and share this video with your friends and subscribe for more stories of courage and hope. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always amazing to see people tuning in from around the globe. Comment 1 if you enjoyed the story, so we can continue bringing you many more.